Okay, part 5 of my story, my testimony. And I have to say, this is getting harder, probably because it's getting closer to the current time. And that's my only reason, actually. It's, it is, I guess, a lot of pain, a lot of disappointment, a lot of hurt, a lot of rejection, a lot of abandonment, whatever. I've come to see that it's rejection, something I've realized the last just few years, like 2 years, maybe. Okay, so I was going to start by going back to the public school experience of teaching and how I was so impressed by how kind most of the kids were. Like there were some angry ninth graders I had in the English class, but for the most part, just, I mean, it was a really cool community. People were friendly and nice, and just, it was so communal. I loved it. So that was surprising and probably different from Salem, Oregon schools, but not the little country town I would have gone to. I think I probably had a similar feel. I don't know. Um, the other thing that I was struck with was how good the relationships were between the students and the parents. At least, my Latin class. I was at a couple of Latin classes. I just amazed at how much communication went on. I don't know. They just seemed like friends with their moms. They talked to them. They um, got advice from them. It was like a two-way street. It was like free. It just seemed natural and totally foreign to me. So I was impressed by that, and kind of I'm sure it awakened in me like a realization that I didn't have that. I'm, I'm not sure if that was really my focus at the time, but like I'm sure I must have noticed that. So that was going on. One thing I noticed, living so far away from home. I mean, I already been in college far from home for 3 years. So, I went home for Christmas and summers. So it's continued that pattern. Just realizing how much more anxious I would feel going home if I had well, the thing is, I had acne. There was always like a fresh one. I had like hormonal acne, is what I figured out on my own. And like, it's been 1,000% proven to me because when my hormones went down and I had zero testosterone, guess what? My acne also cleared up completely. And since I take the supplemental, like I can tell when I take too much, it starts coming back, And I'm in my 40s, so if I still have the same problem, yeah. Anyway, it's just something that my mom still doesn't believe me about. So there's a point of pain. So anyway, just realizing, wow, I feel it's embarrassing enough to go to school and be a teacher, always having some sort of fresh, large pimple, always one like going away, and then always one kind of fading. Like there was at least like three. But I feel worse going home because I just know my mom's going to give me a look and then bring up every single day that I'm there. I noticed you touch your face. Like, I think if you didn't touch your face, you wouldn't have this problem. Like every single time blaming me. It didn't matter how many times I talked about it, explained it. She just wouldn't take my perspective or my body or my knowledge into account of her assumption of what was correct. So, that might portray our relationship the best. Um, I mean, she's a sweet person, but like, not did not feel completely attuned to her. Hopefully, that's been obvious by now. Um, yeah, I just needed validation and like appreciation. I mean, it's the same things that I still feel like I need. Respect, like space to have my own opinion, and like, if I say something, and this goes for not just her, but a lot of people, like everyone, but like a lot of people can't seem to do this. Just respect that as my opinion and like add your comment or not, but don't try to like argue me out of it. Like I don't understand that. Like, oh well, that seems off the wall. I need to like prove that you're wrong. Like, but I seem to spark that in people, and I don't even know why. Because to me, I'm just stating my observations and or experience and or knowledge. And anyway, so this ties into being an INFJ. And if any of you are INFJs, and this is the group that I'm trying to reach, love to know if this is how you felt. I've read like everything about INFJs, so I know this is one of the components. This maybe isn't the biggest one for you. I don't, but I know it's huge for me. I'm still amazed at how often this comes up because when I'm by myself, I feel like I'm normal. My husband gets me pretty well. He's an INFP. Like, so yeah, communication is difficult because we don't use any of the same cognitive functions, but in general, we're both sensitive, intuitive people. But then when I like branch out and like join other groups, and I see how out of the ordinary I must be. Okay, so this feeling of being different and not understood, and like when I was young, feeling really defective. First of all, I felt stupid from my dad and just defective from my mom, and probably defective from my dad too. But at this point, like I said, I feel normal until I see that I'm not. um, anyway, one of the things that helped me so much was finding Jane Austen, and that happened when I was 15. About 15, I don't know. Look up when Sense and Sensibility came out in theaters, and that's when it started. And that could have been the summer. I don't know. My dear Aunt Karen, who helped me in so many ways because she is more sensitive, and she's the one who tutored us in algebra, and then she also taught my siblings and I and a couple others, her son, Latin for a year. It was her getting back into it because she had taken it in high school, and that sparked an interest in Latin. I mean, I always was crazy about like trying to understand what they learned in the old days, and like I wanted a traditional 100-year-old 150-year-old education is really what I wanted. So I was very excited about it. And it ties in with literature and just English language and history, and all the Romans and mythology, not my fave, but yeah, it's just a world that is so rich and important. So anyway, I loved it. We didn't since it was our first year like teaching, we didn't get very far in the grammar, but it was still a very formative thing for me because I decided to study Latin later. And that she also emphasized the history a lot. So not her fault that we didn't get that far. Um, yeah. So, and that aunt really, she was an ISFP, but a tender soul. Like a lot of ISFPs are. I get along with a lot of them, not all. It's like half. um, she told me about, well, Jane Austen. I mean, she didn't tell me at first. She encouraged my cousin and I to go see the movie when it came out, and we saw it, and I was like, not just hooked. It was more like I found my soulmate, Jane Austen, and I found the world that I wish I lived in. Um, yeah, love that. And that's still my favorite book, my favorite movie. It's just so good. And so after watching the movie, I read the book, and then I read all the other books, and then watched the movies as they came out. This is the very beginning of Jane Austen taking over the world. And my aunt loaned me her Jane Austen books, but then I bought my own. So, and that was something like, as a homeschooler with not a lot of kids in my own age, it just seemed like they were mostly 5 years younger, my sister's age. The ones I didn't know anyone else who read Jane Austen, who liked her. That is, like, I did have a friend who didn't like her. So I was again like alone, but I felt so validated. And there were some other things prior to Jane Austen, like, this is prior, yeah, like just a year before, when I was 14, I discovered Flambards. It's also like a trilogy, but the books themselves aren't what's so amazing. They're kind of simply written, kind of for juvenile not for adults exactly, but it was made into a miniseries in like 1978 or something, and it's so well done and so good. And the father in that is a narcissist, so that was like eye opening. Like, oh, this guy. Of course, that word I never heard, not the word, but I was like, this guy's like my dad. Like, it was the first time I'd really seen that portrayed in literature, movies. Of course, my dad actually likes that series too, and he would just laugh at him, like not seeing at all that he's kind of exactly the same. Um, I also love Sherlock Holmes. That puts you in the Sherlock Holmes world. It's a similar feeling, but not. It's not the emotional feeling. That's more like the literary time era and beautiful language. I love his writing style. But Jane Austen, it's the wow. She sees the world like I see it. She sees people's motivations behind everything. She sees their pride. Like to me, these things are so obvious all the time, and she pokes fun at them, like I do in my head by myself to myself. Um, it was just mind blowing how much I loved her. So anyway, I glommed onto her. And that's, I probably would have chosen England anyway, because I already loved Black Beauty, Sherlock Holmes, A Little Princess. Those are the main ones. But, Jane Austen. And I remember my dad and I were on a bus in, I guess, in London. Possibly it was, yeah, it was London. Um, and the tour guide asked everyone to raise their hands if they were into Jane Austen, and like three other people raised their hands, and I was like, "What? Other people have heard of her?" To me, that was mind opening, eye opening. Anyway, I since realized other people can love Jane Austen, but for the longest time, I really was skeptical of other people's love of Jane Austen. But to some extent, I still am. A lot of people love Elizabeth Bennet, Pride and Prejudice, and that's kind of the extent. A lot of people like her characters, but like I love Jane Austen. I wanted to know everything about Jane Austen, and so I did read everything I could about her. And then I visited that on that trip in Bath. I think we only hit the outside of where she lived. Later, it's kind of confusing. I've been to Bath 3 times. Later, I think I went to her museum home in Bath, and then also her place in Southampton, and also her death place in Salisbury, I believe. So anyway, I've done the Jane Austen pilgrimage, and Bath, England, is one of my two top favorite cities, and second one is Rome, Italy. I guess the third would be Boston, Massachusetts. Okay, so there was my Jane Austen thing, and just that resonance. So I guess that happened first, the Jane Austen, and then the INFJ realization. Prior to that, I would say the English, I love England realization. Um, prior to that was the I love cats realization. I guess before that, even it was like a I love pink realization. And no, I love other colors as much as I love pink, but I still love a nice delicate rose pink. I do. So anyway, what I love deeply, and it doesn't really change. Um, and that I feel like it segues into my next realization, which was living on my own in that apartment in East Hampton. My mom was reading a book called The Verbally Abusive Relationship, and she told me about it. So I bought the book. We did have good talks about these sorts of things because she was working through. That was about the time they finally got divorced. But just, I was always listening and interested in anything psychological and anything relational, personal. So I was certainly acting as a sounding board for her and the marriage troubles and things like that. And with my dad to whatever extent it could be. Um, so anyway, when I read this book, The Verbally Abusive Relationship by, it's been a long time. I think it was Pamela something. I don't remember. That was another realization of a kind of a mind blowing nature. Um, I was like, that was abuse. Is that what it was? Is that why it was so hard? And I still didn't even know the word narcissist, except of course in the mythological sense. But that's It's not enough. So anyway, verbal abuse was the key word that I latched onto at that time, and just realizing, oh, all these, this word salad, that's a component. This gaslighting, this, those are the, yeah, two main key phrases. Just this shouting, this all this stuff is abuse. So that was good to know, and that was a process and a journey. And I would have to say later, I mean, to catch you up to where I am now, 3 some years ago, is studying different modalities to becoming a coach, which was my interest. So like all about narcissistic abuse and also attachment theory. So just the word trauma and just what that really means, especially when you're defining it as your response to what happened, not defining what happened, but just your response, your nervous system response. That was another like, oh, maybe this is really even more at the heart of what I felt, more than the INFJ, more than, verbal abuse. It's this trauma. Anyway, it's all true. It's all true. And these happen in layers. And okay, to really catch you up to where I am now, like after writing all those poems, you know, the first book of the trilogy is about my home and family, a lot of my dad and my mom. The second book was, but I had my own soul to find. So all about who am I as a person, kind of the sensitive, the INFJ, all that. The writer, whatever else. And then the third part was my spirit learning how to fight. It was just like really realizing that I needed to fight like for my own identity, for my own spiritual well-being. That was a realization that came during that time. And then my eyes started to be open to just what I would say are demonic influences on Christians. And boy, my eyes have been open way more since then, but that's when it was starting. And that was more just in a emotional way. Like when I was writing, it just, in order, I guess what I'm focused on when I write is the feeling that I had, the experience, or it was really more the feeling, because I often don't remember the experience that well. It's just, but I do remember key things. So there's some key things, and then what I felt. Let's see my train of thought. Yeah, so it was like a spiritual warfare from an emotional, spiritual standpoint. And so now at this point in my life, a few years after those poems, I really feel like rejection was at the heart of everything. And I finally then pinpointed it as spiritual rejection. And that, took me a long time to figure out, because my parents are ostensibly Christian. And yet here I felt spiritually rejected by them. And not just them, many of the churches I've gone to. So I guess I could segue into my church experience now. Whatever church we went to when I was really little, and I know it was called Crossroads. It was in Salem, Oregon, and I don't think it's existed for a long time. They must have been really on point, because, as a 3-year-old, I knew I needed to accept Jesus as my savior. And I don't know, I have these impressions that even during the sermon, I think I sat in on that sometimes. Just listening somewhat, I'm sure I didn't catch most of it, but just getting spiritual truths from it. I just remember that, especially when I compare that to all the other churches. I just remember that one and like, wow, I feel like I was like learning. They must have really known what they were talking about. So from there, when we moved to the country when I was 5.5, we tried this First Baptist Church, no, Bethel Baptist Church, for like a year. And I liked it because I finally got to be in a Sunday school class with a bunch of kids, and my friend Mandy from up the road was there, and our neighbors from up the road, the homeschool family were there. And I think they were both in my Sunday school class. But we only went there for I think a couple months. Like it felt like I was in a classroom. We were all around this table, and there were quite a few of us. I don't know, maybe 12 at least, maybe 15. And it even was marked like first grade on the door. It just was like, oh my gosh, I can finally experience school. But we weren't there for very long because my dad, he loves to challenge people and harass them, basically. Picture Trump, but worse. I mean, he's worse. He's much worse. So we stopped going there. And to his credit, like these people are kind of dry and a bit religious. But the fact that my dad has a ton of demons, likes to harass people, isn't really a good approach either. So we didn't get to go there for long, but I remember liking that. But I was heavily influenced by that church because our neighbors, the homeschool family, they offered to start taking us to Awanas. So that lasted through sixth grade. That was a Wednesday thing where you learn scripture and have chapel time and like a game time and the Bible time. I think that's it. So that was good. That was good for us. It was our one social thing, and boy, did we have nerves before, a bit, but not extremely. So anyway, from those churches, I also remember when I was about 10, we're also in this church in the area that I learned a lot in, and I think they just had really sound biblical teachings. Like they would be going through the Old Testament stories, but like in a deep level, like Abraham, Moses, especially remember Abraham, and whatever else. Because as I listened to like all of Derek Prince's legacy radio broadcasts a few years ago, it just brought to mind, oh, I think I've heard some glimmer of this, yeah, somewhere, and that's where it had to have been. So again, like I couldn't even find the name of that church when I Googled it because it obviously doesn't exist anymore. That was years ago. And how do you find out about the past online when it existed before internet? I don't know. But then as about 11-year-old, we started going to a Foursquare church in that area, which was all right. Um, I liked the worship. They were slightly, they were actually more charismatic. They actually kind of helped raise our hands a little bit. So my dad loved to make fun of that, and just how slow some of the songs were. Um, Whatever. My dad even was asked to like teach the Sunday school for like my group. That was like the last Sunday school, as an 11-year-old that I ever went to. But here's an example of how he did it. He only called on the other kids. He didn't let us talk. I don't even know if we wanted to, but yeah, it seemed unfair. And they're all talking about Home Alone. The movie had just come out. Of course, we weren't allowed to watch it, so we were, you just a little older than these kids, and we're not allowed to watch it. I have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. We went there a few years, I believe, but then found a home church sort of thing that's where we met that other homeschool family. And that was very fun because it's just at the George's house, and afterwards we'd play games together, like either kick the can or basketball, because they had a basketball little court, or croquet or something with all these family with the girls, and there were other kids there. So that was actually really fun. I really liked that. Um, I think we were there for at least 3 years. Okay, and then after that, we went to this one in Salem when I was 15 to 17, maybe even to 18. And that's where I reconnected with a girl in the Salem homeschool group that I kind of knew, but not that well because we live in the country, 15 miles away. Who became a good friend, a solid friend, and she was an ENFJ, and she really helped me because she could kind of understand me and had the patience to let me speak. I always needed a lot of time, like a lot of pause before I would even speak or bring up something I wanted to talk about. That sort of speaking, I mean. So, okay, and then yeah, at that church, someone who became a family friend. He was from Ireland, and he had a kind of prophetic gift of seeing a little bit. And so he helped me a bit by, first of all, showing me like a vision or sharing a vision he had of me walking up the staircase, steps. This is when I had a lot of crazy, tremendous amount of fear. This is as I was 17, about to enter college, trying to figure out what I was doing next. I know that the staircase he saw full of light, the first step was, I don't know if it was fear or faith, but like kind of the two went hand in hand. You know, it meant a lot to me at the time. Actually, got me pretty far. That's all I remember of it. Okay, so for all those churches, and then as I was going to that small Bible school, when I wasn't at the Portland Saturday Market on Sunday, I would check out the church they had with one of the prior Greek teachers there, and then one of the current Greek teachers, and then one of the other old guy teachers. So there were like three churches kind of spawned off of that one, and they're interesting. They at least were like preaching from the Greek New Testament, which was cool. In the two of them, they knew Greek. Yeah. So then, and then in college, I didn't feel like I had to go to church, and but I did go a few times with different friends, and they just seemed. This was in the Midwest, so very different, Michigan. Um, I just remember feeling, I don't know, these excluded, kind of like, okay, but like, where's the Christian love? Like, are you guys gonna accept me or talk to me? Just sort of feeling this as an outsider and a bit critical, I guess. And I felt like the people I went with were a bit naive and immature, and also just maybe just too happy. Like they didn't have any sadness, they didn't have any um, depth. I mean, they kind of just seemed shallow to me because I had all this hurt that I wasn't even fully aware of then yet, but it made me feel outside. So I didn't really go much. Besides, like there was not even enough time to do homework, but I would off and on go anyway. Um, so then, yeah, I already told you about that church in Amherst, which I loved. Went to for about 7 years. I loved it because people were friendly. There was always college students coming through. There's some key friends I still have. I don't talk to them that often, but they're still friends. And then people would change. It was great. As far as the preaching, teaching, at some point I did start feeling like it was solid. Like I liked that he always chose a passage of scripture and went through it. And I would take copious notes, even though they were just like little like I usually take notes. It's not like oh, here's exactly what they're saying. It's just like little tiny tidbits and not necessarily things I didn't know. I just take a lot of notes just because I kind of get bored sitting there. But there were a lot of little tidbits that were good, and maybe the bigger bits, too. But it was always started feeling a little Calvinist, is what I started thinking of it as, because it was, here's all this stuff, and then Jesus did it all for you. Have a good week doing life the way you want it. That's how it felt to me. Also, we got to know these guys in this church. One of them, who I first got to know, was into Calvinism, was reading Jonathan Edwards, was like, oh yeah, his church is right there in Northampton. Sinners in the hands of an angry God. He believed in double predestination, not just that Christians are predestined to be Christians, but that the damned are predestined to be damned, and I was like, ooh, why would you believe that? So anyway, it kind of felt like it tied in, as it certainly did, to that hyper dispensationalism, super predestination Bible school I had just gone to. So I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So I, was reading up on that. I read the Piper book that everyone loved so much, Desiring God, which I honestly just I found it to be fine. It wasn't like I disagreed. It was kind of a one point thing, for God's glory. Everything's about God's glory. And I don't know. It didn't really do a whole lot for me. Yeah. So just towards the end, I was kind of noticing, okay, before the end, I wanted us to evangelize. Like I wanted to learn how to evangelize. Here I am in this college town. I didn't know how to talk to people, but I thought we should be doing it. And I brought it up in like the small groups, but nobody else really got my point. So that was sad. And I just, that's been a question or a passion I've had for a long time. Like, why aren't we evangelizing? If we believe this, like, it seems like if we really believe this, we would love people and talk to them. Unfortunately, talking to people has always been something I've done a lot of. Anyway, I don't think it's hard talking to people now, but like bringing up God, that is hard. And like, I do want to still get into it. Okay. So that pretty much caught you up with the church. Okay. So then when I moved to Worcester, there was a vineyard church I went to there, which had some cool people. I later found out that the pastor, I mean, he was great, like a great guy, friendly and nice, but he was sort of copying sermons from the other church, the other vineyard church. So I was like, he doesn't seem very genuine anymore when he uses the word I. And I just heard this at the other church last week. He was saying the word I for the story, for this anecdote. So, that part wasn't strong. And I was only there for a year or so. And then with my husband later, we went to, he likes some more formal, he just likes classical music. So formal churches, especially if they have like organs. So we went to a church like that, an Episcopalian church with an organ. And yeah, it was beautiful music, but the pastor, I mean, he went by minister. He just kind of gave a politically correct Jesus sermon. Like I'm not convinced he was saved. It's very liberal and very, shallow and like, that sort of thing. So we went there for a while, and then eventually I was like, let's go to a real church. I feel like this isn't even like, I honestly don't know if this guy's saved or not. So a flyer came in the mail with a C.S. Lewis quote. I was like, oh, this one looks good. So we started going there. No, I won't say what it was called because I'm going to say some things about it that aren't as flattering. But we went there for 3-ish years, and unfortunately, they hardly ever quoted C.S. Lewis. It was sort of just like a bait and switch. They quoted Piper quite a lot, but Tim Keller even more. So that other church was quoting Piper a lot. The one in Amherst, and this one was quoting Tim Keller like all the time. Like it almost seemed like he was Jesus to them. Yeah, so beautiful music. They had some talented musicians, and it was quite a big worship band. But then the sermons were kind of bullet point sermons, all about the sovereignty of God, and just very shallow and very bullet point like sermons. It wasn't even. It didn't like they didn't hold together, in my opinion. It was just some bullet points that made sense to him, apparently, and kind of had the nature of God seeming like a narcissistic jerk. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I'd have to get into this. So yeah, we joined the small group with the pastor at first because he lived actually fairly close to us, and it was okay. He was very friendly at first too, like seemed likable. Some of the discussions around that table were, and we had a meal together, so kudos to them. I think that's important. I just remember noticing like he'd would ask a question and they would just regurgitate something he said in the sermon or Jesus as the answer, and I just thought, wow, this feels like we're in Sunday school. Like, are these people like adults? Like, do they have their own thoughts? And this was when I was, quite mind and a vice feeling. I did not feel normal. I was still falling Falling ill. No, this was sort of the height of the not feeling well, not feeling normal. So it just everything seemed slow. Like my brain just seemed slow. I couldn't always articulate the words, so I didn't really feel like I could even engage that much. Um, but I would be thinking about it and just yeah. And then aside from that, I just later found out that this pastor had a major porn addiction, as did everyone else in the church, like literally. Um, and just one time we were sitting around that table, this demon came out from around him and was I just heard sex, 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 and I was like, wow, that's obviously a demon. Like this does not happen to me. Um, and that would be why. It's because, and how do I know this? Because my husband's a man, and like we would break up into the women and the men and share prayer requests at the end. And for him, it was always, I need help working on my sermon and porn addiction. Um, in that order, sermon most important, then porn addiction second. And just he said that everyone else was like, yeah, yeah, me too. I think I'll leave it there. So at some point it just felt uncomfortable with the pastor and his wife and us, because we were kind of sensitive, quietish people, deep thinkers. And this guy was like, yes, TJ, very um, administrative like type person. His wife was very loosey goosey. Just wasn't a great fit for us. And some of the other people we liked, they kind of changed. So anyway, we found another group, which were very cool people. Um, and we would drink. They have like cocktails that would knock you out, like at your small group. What do we call that? House church. Perhaps isn't the best witness for Christ, but they were all into drinking. It was fun, and that was when alcohol really affected me strongly, because like as I later discovered, well, this is especially with red wine. Red wine would and always has and always and still does have the most effect on me. Red wine has a molecule very similar to norepinephrine, and now I don't remember the name. It's yeah. It rhymes with the amine. Um, Whatever it is, it binds to the norepinephrine receptors, and then it shoots the norepinephrine into your bloodstream. So then you get that. I think what it does is tighten all your blood vessels. So then you get this stress hormone, the stress response. I mean, um, but I think alcohol to some extent does the same stress response. At any rate, at this point in my life, I was drinking more than normal because like people drank that I knew, but it would just have such an effect on me of like slowing down my mental capacity, and like I would start slurring words a bit and really have a hard time thinking of the words and articulating. Not that like anyone noticed, but like for me, it was like I was at half capacity is what it felt like. So anyway, I was also going to just point out this small group, even though they were cool, they had the same porn addiction, so they would talk about every small group. My husband, he didn't have that problem, so he didn't really like the small groups, to say the least. Okay, so moving on. At some point, I heard God speak to me, like somebody, God's Holy Spirit, somebody in my brain say, my sheep hear my voice. And also just kind of release me, like you don't have to go there. You're free to go somewhere else. Not that I felt bound to go there, but it was just like helpful to know. And I tend to be loyal and want to help change people in some way, but not that I felt like I could there. So at any rate, so we found another church, and this one was kind of a cute little church buildings in Quincy. It was kind of its own denomination, and I forget the title of it. Um, Brethren something. It's something Scandinavian from the Midwest. Um, it was good for us for a while. It, honestly, is just kind of too religious, kind of a I don't want to say Baptist, but just like a traditional church feel of, we like the way we do things. We don't necessarily try to jibe the Bible with what church is, that sort of place. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh yes, all this drama. So we really liked it at first. The associate pastor woman was a woman. She was kind of new there, and she was very ENFJ. I thought I liked all ENFJs, but she was kind of a pushy ENFJ type, very Martha Stewart. Her home was immaculate and very, very, very decorated. And we're talking like 100. I think it was 100, close to that. Like for Christmas, those little houses lights that light up, like 100 of them that she put out everywhere. If that tells you anything about her. At any rate, somehow she I had a thing go on. First of all, like I helped out in the Sunday school, like for the older Sunday school, which was her daughter and just like one other girl. So I was doing that curriculum, was kind of under her doing that, and I got some joy out of that because it was like the curriculum. It was good. It was solid. It was good, solid Old Testament Bible set stories with good points. I don't know. It just, there was a weird vibe with her. She'd have me help do things, and then I felt like she took the credit. And anyway, I couldn't even pinpoint it for the longest time. But then during COVID, I took over the Bible study, the women's Bible study that another friend had been doing, but she kind of got cancer, so she took a step back, and such weirdness with her a bit. But then the pastor's wife, way more so. She was just mean from the beginning. Like when I first introduced myself to her, she said, "Oh, I'm so and so. Sorry, I have to go over there. My mom's over there," or something. Like, it was so rude. I couldn't believe it. And she kind of kept that up. Like, you know, I just remember one time standing in front of the water thing, and she's like, excuse me," like just unnecessarily rude for no reason. I just remember going to a barbecue at their house and her throwing away the thing I had over my salad. Like, oh, it's just weirdness. And I think it's for her. I mean, she seemed like a very insecure, controlling person. But it was because we kind of hit off with her husband. He's an INTP. I like talking INTPs. He was kind of a henpecked, um, like I liked him, but kind of a gutless wonder in the end in terms of sermons or character. But I think because my husband and I both hit it off with him, kind of like talking to him, that she was extra mean and nasty to us. So yeah, the combination of those three people. During COVID, I took over this Bible study, and there was like here's a list. During COVID, we're going to have this other church oversee it. So talk to this person. This person will contact you. And this person never contacted me, this person from this other church, to like say whether, like, it seemed like they were encouraging us to choose a book to study. And I was like, I'd rather just study the Bible. At least first of all, I think that's what we should be doing, you know. So it just felt very weird. Like I never got official approval to study the Bible, but I didn't really think I needed that, honestly. But it was weird. And then this woman didn't contact me. I didn't really feel comfortable having some stranger from a different church micromanaging me, so I didn't really pursue that. But then just this lack of communication from the associate pastor and pastor's wife was weird. And then when it passed off to me, like I had emailed the pastor's wife, "Hey, can I?" Yeah, I remember this. Can I just study the Bible? And then she never wrote back, but in passing one day she said, "Yes, that's fine. You can do that," and walked past me. And it was like, because that was like the most she could muster to talk to me, was like for to utter those words and walk past me. It was just left me feeling really uncomfortable. Here I have all these exclusion and not belonging wounds, but also just a high priority for friendliness and niceness. And these people are being weird. So then COVID happened, and I was just on my own teaching this Bible study. And that was another thing that happened. It was like, well, I'd like to do this night. can I use your Zoom link? Because that was the thing. And they're like, oh, that night's already taken, so you're gonna have to get your own. So I had to pay for the Zoom. Everybody else was using the church Zoom. I had to pay for my own. This lack of communication. Anyway, it was hard. It was really hard for me. I had to. I just knew it was a growing time, and that's when I was getting some dreams from God. Like first of all, I had a dream of various dreams, not all in the same night. Of those the three: the associate pastor, the pastor's wife, and then the pastor himself. So they were very helpful. I don't know if I share them here. It was just sort of showing me these are dead ends for you. You don't have to be loyal to them. Kind of move on. That was the gist I got from them. I want to share. And I was also getting a bunch of tsunami dreams, and also I was reading through this book called Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. Not really talking about narcissists, but just sort of manipulative people, because I don't think this person was a narcissist, but definitely had some manipulation going on. So that was helpful for me. So also I was having a lot of dreams about pointing that I needed to forgive her, like having being hairy, I think, shows you're fleshly. And I mean, having to go to the bathroom, and honestly don't know if that's just because had to go pee or not, but like I do know I needed to forgive her, and that was a process because it is hard when a Christian treats you like crap like this for no reason, and you're like, but I'm doing this for the church, and yeah, it's hard not to get bitter. So I was a little bitter for a while, but I worked through it. And that makes me think of the next church. Boy. So the next church was, yeah. So after COVID, as people were coming back, I'm like, this is sort of dead. I've done this for at that point I didn't really come back, but I was still doing the Bible study for a while. But anyway, like 3 years, and I was like, I need a new church. Somehow looked on the map, like for churches, and found there was one meeting in a Head Start sort of place, like a you know preschool type place. Like it's literally like 6 minutes away. So I started going there, and I immediately loved the pastor and his wife. I mean, it was tiny, like 12 to 15 people, maybe 15, but in this little room. Oh yeah, there was a guy on the keyboard who was very talented, a young man. His wife sang; she had a beautiful voice. The pastor was a doctor, and he was this zany, seemed like an ENFP personality type, who had very creative sermons, not super deep, but creative and biblical. Like using different parts of the Bible, even like Hebrews and James. I'm not sure if he did James, but he was doing Hebrews when I first came, so that was very impressive. I love Hebrews. His wife was very sweet, kind. They would have the London English accents. It was actually somewhat healing for me, I think. Yeah, it just even that didn't last because at some point it just became like, well, but where's the Bible? Like, I don't feel like we're evangelizing. We're not digging very deep. We're not talking about heaven or hell. Like, it seems like you guys don't quite believe in hell. Like, it felt like a toxic positivity. And just when I would share, because I was getting to know the pastor's wife better, like just share or personal things, she just sort of give me that toxic positive answer, like, oh, just be happy. Kind of invalidating and stuff. And I just knew I needed more. Finally, I was there for like a year and a half. Also, that awesome music leader. He and his wife moved on. I mean, the music was amazing. That was probably the most healing part. So I missed them. And this other guy stepped up. He'd been there a long time on the guitar, and he would lead worship. Wasn't the same as having the keyboard too, but I mean, he was good too. But the fact that it was so tiny, and I felt invalidated and just wasn't growing like biblically or spiritually. But even the Bible, I just felt like it was being short shrifted. I had to leave. I kind of left actually at the same time as this other woman. So she told me about the church she had gone to. So I went there for a year, and that was very It also was called Crossroads Worship Center. It was just a very, I think I think it was Nazarene. If it wasn't Nazarene, it reminded me of my grandma's Nazarene church. So I don't know if it was, but actually I think it was technically a some sort of Pentecostal. It just seemed very traditional sermons. They had a beloved 80-year-old woman pastor. She was just retiring, so I heard yeah, it was like just retiring. I heard a few of her sermons, and then it was a new person. Um, and I went there for about a year, but he's honestly seemed kind of like the most conservative, not pushing the envelope, not going out and like preaching your own sermon type of person, like just using stock sermons. I'm sure there's a place people get these dry stock sermons from, because I've heard plenty of them in my life. I did my best I joined two small groups at first. I don't know how I pushed myself to do all these things. Um, I'm gonna have to wrap this up too. Um, Again, they were there. I only can only remember one right now, but kind of good, but just not deep enough for me. I'm a deep person. I've been a Christian since I was 3, a long time, and to just rehash things. Oh yeah, the other one was just reading through the books of the Bible, and it was good. And all these people my age and older who were as insightful as I was, or at least as knowledgeable, are just thinking, wow, why are we just sharing, like agreeing with each other, stuff that we already know? Like, I feel like we should be reaching people who don't know this already. And then the other group was studying this booklet, very slow, going through it very slow, about the armor of God. But even that fell a bit short of, I felt, explaining the armor of God, because I've since read a few other books about it and learned more. So anyway, not perfect. I'll just have to remind myself this is where I left off. So then I found another church, but I'll stop this for now. Okay. Till the next time.